Good morning, listeners in UK and USA. Bonjour à tout le monde en France. And finally, Dobry utro, tovaryshi w Rosji. Hopefully that includes quite a lot of people around the planet. And the aim, of course, as I said last week in my first and initial vlog, I think it's called a vlog, I want to get in touch with a lot of people from different parts of the world. And I'm thinking at the moment, particularly port cities like Liverpool, which is where I'm based at the moment, to come and let me know what's happening in their areas so that I know or can make a comparison of events and reactions, and particularly governmental public health authority reactions to the overwhelming information we're getting about coronavirus and the current massive lockdowns that we're experiencing in the United Kingdom. And you may or may not know, but Liverpool has just been locked down again. And I think it's called Tier 3. 3 tiers with Tier 3, which probably gives you some indication of the severity and the draconian nature of what's happening. Anyway, the clock has just struck 13 on Tuesday the 13th of October 2020. So it's time for an update on affairs related to the coronavirus. And I use that little analogy there from the clock has just struck 13, which comes from George Orwell's 1984. And I think it's the first sentence in that novel. And I think you probably understand why I've chosen that sentence given the situation that we're in. So just to resume my discussion on of the PCR test scandal from last Friday, I'd like to reiterate that the average outcome of tests is approximately 90% false positive. That's a remarkably high figure. So I mentioned last week a video, I think, presented by Spiro Skouras on YouTube, and I'll put these notes in the YouTube show notes underneath the video. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, then you can just look there, and it'll be written down for you with a link to the information I'm providing. So I mentioned this video presented by Spiro Skouras on YouTube entitled "We're Being Lied To," in which he plays a clip of a video by Kary Mullis, the inventor of the PCR test, and winner, because of it, and winner of the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, going back quite a few years. So this is quite somebody who's recognized and lauded by the various governmental organizations around the planet. In this clip, Mullis explains that you can find anything you want with this test. Yeah, I'll repeat that. You can find anything you want with this test, that being the PCR test. And this is not at all what we've come to understand from the respective governments and public health bodies and authorities and global health bodies and authorities who suggest that we should all be having PCR tests every 5 seconds, if not more frequently. So the PCR test functions effectively according to Kary Mullis. I have no background in this. I'm just really listening to other people's authoritative voices on what's going on. So the PCR test functions by magnifying certain minuscule, minute fragments of a virus, which can be active or from a previous infection, possibly even many years ago, possibly even in your childhood. I mean, these things stick around, you know. As you know, it magnifies them over and over again, and it magnifies them, 30, 40, 50, 60 times apparently. So almost everybody will have a fragment of a previous coronavirus. I've got to have it. I've had colds, flu, various other things as well over the years that have been viral infections that have hit me, and these organisms leave a trace in the body, so that's how our immune system works, isn't it? You've got a little trace of what the disease is, so that your immune systems knows how to react very quickly. It's the new viruses that the immune system can't deal with always very effectively, and that's the basis of the immune system. So it just seemed to me that when my children were young, and I was thinking about this the other night, At least one of them was ill. Almost every 2 weeks it seemed I was either going to the chemist to buy some ibuprofen or paracetamol, or going to the doctors to get something because usually because there was a temperature or fever involved, or an earache, and that's usually, you've got to get that checked out by the doctor. So I'd be the doctors, at least once a month with one of them, and it was so regular, and this was happening all the time because firstly they were in infant school or primary school or whatever, and their immune systems weren't developed, they weren't fully developed. So this is a natural part of childhood, a natural part of being part of the human race. You develop an immune system, and now many years later they're pretty much grown up now. They as much as kids are ever grown up, they have immune systems that function well, and they're rarely ill unless it's effectively sometimes by design. They go out and they don't take care of themselves, and there you go. And consequently their bodies must now have many minute fragments of coronaviruses and other viruses too, and this is how their immune systems work, and that's how my immune system works, and that's how I think possibly everybody's immune system works. So over the years as a parent, well, when you first become a parent, I suppose you're sort of quite anxious about how things are going to be, and whether you're going to be doing the right thing for your offspring, and you sort of tend to read a little bit, or a lot, and you tend to watch stuff on the television and in the newspapers about public health and how to look after kids and that sort of thing. And I read and watched very frequently that children shouldn't be wrapped in, and the expression was always wrapped in cotton wool. You shouldn't be wrapped in cotton wool, but should mix with other children freely as much as possible in order to develop their immune systems. And I took this as being relatively reasonable and logical approach to raising children. I certainly never kept them out of school, ever, that I recall. Apparently all this advice was wrong, and now we shouldn't let children mix with other children. And indeed nowadays, in fact, over the past 4 or 5 months, in fact we can be fined and or even imprisoned for letting children play together. Well, that seems to have changed like 180 degrees. I mean, maybe I've misunderstood something, but I think I've got this about right. We were always told right through my adult life that children should play together. They benefit massively from playing together, and because they spread infections amongst each other, which are rarely lethal. Well, because they're young and they're strong, and they have all this resilience, and then they develop these immune systems, and they're quite able to get through adult life then without attracting too many illnesses. And but apparently all that's wrong now, and now this time with a virus we can't do that kind of thing. So in my opinion, letting children catch viruses is the best way to build their immunity. And well, yes, it has to be, doesn't it? As a child, I had lots of viruses, bacterial infections, injuries. I had chickenpox, measles, mumps, I think was the other one. Yeah, ear infections. So like all kids get that, usually from the swimming pools, because we had a swimming pool at school, so we're quite privileged in that respect. But there was another side to it. You got infections from it. Broken bones, lost teeth from contact sports. Not the best thing in the world to lose a tooth playing a sport. And multiple lacerations from falling off my bike. My brother had, in fact, scarlet fever, which he caught when the fair came to town. I took him down there rather illegally because my parents told me not to. But we had a great time. I had a great time. He caught scarlet fever. I came home with a goldfish. He came home with scarlet fever. There you go. That's the way it works. Dreadful, really, but he was quarantined at home for a couple of weeks, and it wasn't a terribly effective quarantine because he kept escaping from his room and coming down to try and hiding behind the couch to watch television, and we wouldn't grass him up to our parents, that's all that sort of stuff. And nobody else caught it. Nobody else in the family caught it. He was unlucky, and that's how it was. That's how life is. And it's on this basis of understanding that I drive my car. There's a risk involved in driving a car. I could have an accident, hurt myself. I could hurt somebody else. I could kill somebody else. Not deliberately, but I could do it. I haven't noticed anybody stop driving because of that. ever. I ski, I go on holidays skiing, risk involved. Fly abroad on holidays. I swim in the sea, got to be dangerous, right? Climb mountains in winter, that's got to be dangerous, right? Especially here in the more northerly latitudes in the north of England. So risk is the operative word, risk, and that's what it's all about. And if you don't take a risk, you don't live your life. And if you choose even not to live your life, you still don't live in a risk-free environment. You still don't live a risk-free world. So we're all part of that. We all deal with risk in our own ways. It doesn't always work as it should, but for most of your life, I think most of us get away with it. There's an element of luck, of course, in risk. According to information from the UK government concerning fines, which I just mentioned, even with the best will in the world, when I listen to the government and the Prime Minister talking about coronavirus, Tier 3 coronavirus lockdown, fines, imprisonments, COVID marshals, soldiers on the streets with some sort of what they call capacity support, and capacity support means supporting the police, and there we have the fusion doctrine of the military working with the police, doing the same job, and policemen walking around is one thing. Soldiers walking around with no training in the law, no training in understanding anything apart from the lethal context in which soldiers work, and that's what they're there for. It's a worry. So now we have fines imposed for contravening, breaking the arbitrarily imposed rules and the regulations, and these are extraordinarily severe fines. You don't pay your fine, you go to prison. This is a very serious situation, and all this backed up by the military, presumably with machine guns, possibly with hand grenades. You think I'm taking it too far, but well, am I? I mean, if you've got the military on the streets walking around with machine guns, why wouldn't they walk around with hand grenades? Why wouldn't they walk around with a mortar? It's worth a thought. Anyway, so for the first offence, i.e. not wearing a mask, breaking the rule of 6, which I think came from Sherlock Holmes' book. And for those of you who are not familiar with the rule of 6, if you're listening from another country, it's when only 6 people from one family can associate, outside or inside. And if I don't get this right, then I apologise. But then the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, whose name isn't Boris really, it's Alexander. Boris is his stage name, apparently. He can't get it right either. He makes complete mistakes, and it's been all over the newspapers of late and on the television that he makes mistakes. He doesn't know what he's talking about because there are so many different rules in so many different parts of the country, and none of them make any logical sense, as I've just mentioned previously in this discussion and in my video on Friday. So I've just taken note now. I wrote this up before. For the first offence, it's £200 fine, which is reduced to £100 if it's paid in 14 days, presumably when you come out of quarantine. Maybe. Now, if anyone can justify the sum or can justify the reduction or the discounted, then please let me know. I'd be very interested. It's Northwestern Approach at gmail.com. Northwestern Approach at gmail.com. Again, this will be in the show notes below. Second offence, £400. Third offence, £600. Up to, I understand it's 6,400, but then I heard up to 10,000. I'm not sure which. Maybe it's in different parts of the country, different fines. Maybe it's in different parts of Liverpool, different fines. But that would make a huge amount of sense, wouldn't it? And of course, if these fines aren't paid, then unlimited fines. Now, unlimited. Now, what's that? Hundreds of thousands? everything that you possess. I think that's where they're heading to with this, everything that you possess, and or imprisonment. So it could be you make a couple of mistakes, you go to prison. Well, if your fine is 100,000 or 500,000, what's the imprisonment equivalent of that? I don't know, 10 years? I don't know. I'm asking questions here. Whatever it is, it's an outrage. £6,400. I'm pretty certain that would £10,000. I think that would wipe out most families, most working, or families who used to work but don't work anymore for obvious reasons. Then it would wipe them out. I don't know many people around who could pay a £10,000 fine and not have to sell the house, and be able to pay the mortgage after that. When they're not working anymore, when they're going on to unemployment benefits, when that's their savings, I think the statement goes, or the saying goes, that most families in UK, and I think I read this about the States as well, the United States, that most families are one paycheck away from destitution, from losing their property. That's probably not too far from the truth. Anyway, just to put this into a little more perspective, the basic minimum wage in UK is £8.72 an hour, and it's been £8.72 an hour from the 1st of April 2020. The average working week is about 35 hours. Please bear with me, I'm not a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination, so this is all ready reckoning. I'm just doing some basic sums. I'm not checking them, to be honest. I'm just running them through my head, throwing them down, because it's all of average and approximate, but you get the picture here. So that would work out at about £8.72 an hour multiplied by 35 hours works out about £305 per week, minus 20% income tax and approximately 10% national insurance contribution. Just 10 or 11%, maybe 12 or something like that, but I've taken the lower, benefit of the doubt, for national insurance contribution, which goes to support the NHS, the National Health Service, and things like that. Well, I think just the NHS, and if you're off sick from work, then you can go to the hospital for free, and you get things like statutory sick pay, which is paid by the state. And so if you take away 20% for income tax, 10% for national insurance, you'll take 30% away from £305 a week, which approximately works out about £200 a week. And this is the final income, the takeaway money, the net money of somebody on basic minimum wage. And it just turns out that £200 is in fact the first offence fine. So if you walk out of the house without your mask and you forget and you walk into a shop or somewhere where the mask is required, you can be stopped and issued a fine by one of these new authority figures that I think we call COVID marshals, perhaps by a policeman who has some sort of authority to issue on-the-spot fines for walking around without a mask, but they have that authority now, I understand it. Not entirely sure, but that's what we're being told. And the next piece was it could actually be by a soldier walking around the streets with a machine gun and a hand grenade in the other hand, issuing out fines, and he may well just ask for cash. I'd probably pay it in cash if he asked as well. So for someone on basic income, £200, that's it for the week. That's the income for the week. And the initial offence would cost a week's income. So imagine the situation. You've got kids, one of them has been up all night, a few of them have been up all night being ill or something, and you leave the house in the morning without your face mask. You go to wherever you go to and you should be wearing a mask when you get there, and suddenly you're stopped and you're given an arbitrary fine by somebody who doesn't know quite what they're doing, like a COVID marshal or a soldier on the street with a machine gun and hand grenades. How do you manage to pay the rent, feed the family, pay the gas and electricity, travel to work, etc. for the next 14 days until the next wage comes in? and you're a little bit stuck with that situation. So it seems that we're in a very, very serious situation where the minimum fine for the first offence is more than possibly the majority of people in the United Kingdom earn, those on minimum wage, and that's a lot of people here. You know, just talking about face masks, though, that the face mask has become something of a fetish, and seems to be evolving all the time. Maybe you've probably noticed this, and I just thought I'd sort of reiterate it anyway, but you will have seen this on the television over the past few months, that right at the beginning the face mask wasn't necessary. Well, it certainly wasn't in the United Kingdom. Then it was considered unhelpful. Then it was considered helpful. Then it became important. Then it became mandatory in certain circumstances. Now it's mandatory in most circumstances, and in fact mandatory in most circumstances with the possibility of fines and or imprisonment up to £10,000 if you don't wear one. What's next? I think the next one is going to be obligatory in all circumstances with massive fines and or imprisonment. And or imprisonment. It's not or, it's and or. So you can be fined unlimited amounts, 100,000, 200,000, totally wiped out, and then because you can't pay that, everything has to be sold. You go to prison, and your children and family go onto the streets, and you spend the next 10 years in prison. Who's to say that can't happen? Because all these new laws came in without any parliamentary review. There was no discussion in Parliament. In fact, most of the politicians weren't there to sign up to this, and they didn't even bother. They abstained, I think, from these votes, most of the politicians, most of the MPs in Parliament. So as far as I see it, the face mask is now clearly a political emblem of faith in the government to get it right. And okay, faith in the government to get it right. Faith in the government to get a medical issue right. Never saw that before. But then I thought, well, when did successive governments, any of them, Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrats, any of them, the Greens, when did they ever get it right before? If they ever had it right before, we wouldn't have massive unemployment, poverty, illiteracy in the UK, which I think stands at something like 30% illiteracy in the UK. We've gone from 99% literacy, which was in the 1960s, to 70% literacy in this country, which is, and I think it's about the same for numeracy as well. We're an illiterate, functionally illiterate, functionally innumerate society now in UK. Maybe that's a bit of a shock, but go and do the research, you'll find it all there. Anyway, that just about, I think, brings me to the end of what I think is enough for people to listen to. You don't want to listen to my voice for more than, I think, 20-25 minutes. So I'll keep it in short, sweet segments, not necessarily sweet, but short segments. Keep it moving like that so that it's not too much to listen to, and I'll put all the information that you need in terms of my sources. Where did I get all this information? I'll put them in the notes underneath on YouTube so you can see where it's all from, and you can do your own research. And please check everything I've said. If I'm wrong, let me know. I find it difficult to understand exactly what the government's doing. Anyway, thank you very much, and I hope I'll see you very soon. I'll put another video up, hopefully, before the weekend. Thank you. Bye.